Hello and welcome. Would you like to know how to turn off your anxiety? I'm sure if you have anxiety that you would. Well, the answer really is your nervous system. This video is all about using your nervous system to basically turn off anxiety forever. Hi, my name's Jesse. Welcome to the channel Open Source Owners, where we talk about what if humans had an owner's manual. Okay, let's get into it. I'd like to introduce you to the Autonomic Nervous System, the ANS. It has two branches, and you've probably heard of that. One is called the sympathetic branch, and the other is the parasympathetic branch. This is important because these branches of the nervous system can drive anxiety. They can be the cause of anxiety. Now, why they got dysregulated, why they're telling our brain to be in an anxious mode at all times, that's another story, and we will touch on that, but it's a bit of a deeper story. The main thing to know is if we're experiencing anxiety all the time, we're experiencing cortisol, adrenaline levels being pretty much too high, elevated at all times, always looking for, always expressing to the brain that there's some alarm bell, some potential danger. And the reason for that is the autonomic nervous system. As you see here, this is the sympathetic nervous system is the one we're going to talk about first. Now, this is hyper aroused. You have energy. Energy flows to the heart. Energy flows to the muscles. You are capable of running. You are capable of fighting. And this is why this is called fight and flight. This is the active form of your nervous system, and it involves excess energy. You have energy to burn. As you see, it's called fight and flight. Now, that means you're capable, when your sympathetic nervous system is turned on, you're capable of running very fast or fighting things that you may not think you can beat, like a bear. The nervous system just automatically goes into a fight and flight mode for survival. That's why it's called the autonomic nervous system. It happens automatically. Now, the sympathetic nervous system in the brain involves the amygdala. I'm sure you've heard of the amygdala. The amygdala is part of the brain associated with scanning for danger signals. If you come upon a bear, if you hear a gunshot, if something is a legitimate threat, you step out in traffic and the bus comes by really fast, your amygdala is the thing that happens in nanoseconds to pull you back, to make you run, and in other words, to sense danger and to cause you to survive that danger by any means necessary. Fight and flight is associated with, as I've mentioned earlier, high cortisol and adrenaline, as we've already talked about, and also digestion and logic centers of the body go offline. So digestion literally means you are no longer digesting food during a fight and flight moment. Of course, why would you need to? You wouldn't. It takes a lot of energy to digest food, so the body just turns that system off. So there's a connection here between chronic stress, chronic anxiety, and poor digestion, stomach issues, IBS, that type of thing. But also the logic centers go offline. Your problem solving, your ability to creatively think, that aspect of your brain turns off as well. Again, it's just energy conservation. You need all that energy from the sympathetic nervous system to survive. You don't need it to be thinking grand thoughts about the universe. And the parasympathetic nervous system, that's the opposite of the sympathetic nervous systems. These two branches of the autonomic nervous system work like a teeter-totter. When one goes up, the other goes down. You're either in one or the other, or in a brief transitionary period. Now, the parasympathetic system is hypo-aroused, under-aroused. It's a resting energy. And that's why it is referred to at times, and much easier to remember, in my opinion, as rest and digest. So we have a fight and flight system, and we have a rest and digest system. Now, this whole this frame that we're using here is definitely simplified. There's more to the story than this, but this will get us halfway there, so it's good enough. What's going on in the amygdala in rest and digest? It's offline. The amygdala is the amygdala is always sort of looking for danger, but it's sort of just chill. It's not sending signals of danger. It's just sort of like scanning the environment. Rest and digest is associated with higher levels of serotonin, dopamine, oxytocin, all the feel-good neurotransmitters that we want to experience, that we associate with, happiness and contentment. That's what we're experiencing when we're in rest and digest. Digestion and logic centers are on. So we're able to digest food and pull out nutrients. We're also able to digest ideas and sort of problems that we're trying to solve. And we're able to use our logic. We're able to express well. We're able to be creative. We're able to problem solve. As I say here, turning off fight and flight is the same as turning on rest and digest. So remember that it's this nervous system thing. So we're not having to turn off one system and on another. It's just simply we have to turn on the one that we want, and the other will naturally go off. Remember, fight and flight and the amygdala is reactive, so you might find yourself having a short fuse or losing your temper easy. It's also involved in sensing fear, and in fact, fear is one of the things that pushes us into and turns on the fight and flight system. If we're in chronic fear, then our fight and flight system will be overactivated, and chronic stress does the same thing. So if we're always having to run here and there and there and there, and there's not enough hours in the day, that is a recipe for turning on perpetual fight and flight or perpetual sympathetic nervous system activation. You don't want that. The body's not meant to run on the sympathetic nervous system all day, every day. It's meant to be a short burst, and then it goes back and gives way to the rest and digest. Now, rest and digest involves the prefrontal cortex and other higher functioning aspects of the brain. Tamps down the amygdala, as we talked about. It's involved in logic, problem solving, and creativity. That's more of what we want. It's more sustainable for the body because it uses less energy. It uses a more sort of slow and steady form of energy rather than a sort of a high octane, burn through it real fast energy of the fight and flight system. So how do we turn on the rest and digest system, which remember will also turn off the fight and flight system? Well, check this out here. We can do this very quickly by combining these things or some variation of these things. Labeling, which is also sometimes referred to as grounding. One way to do labeling, and there's sort of infinite ways to do it, is let's say you're driving a car. What could you label as you're driving? What could you say out loud or in your head to keep your brain in a labeling mode? And so obviously you could read everybody's license plate out loud, or you could read all the signs out loud, etc. If you're going shopping for groceries, you could label boxes as you go. You could label all the blue things or all the green things. The point is, by labeling or grounding, as sometimes it's referred to, you're activating the prefrontal cortex. Look at this slide. Remember, when we activate the prefrontal cortex, we're automatically tamping down the amygdala. So anything you can do to activate your logical centers consciously, even though you're feeling anxious, sort of just go into a labeling or a grounding practice, that will actually help shift your entire nervous system into rest and digest. And that's exactly what we want. Slow breathing will also do this. In through the nose, out through the mouth, ideally, because that produces more nitric oxide, which gets rid of cortisol and adrenaline, which is something we want. And if you can breathe out longer than in, all the better, because that mimics a rest and digest breathing pattern. Equal breaths in and out also works, but if you can breathe in for 4 seconds and out for 8, even better. That will turn on the rest and digest system. If you can engage peripheral vision, it'll do the same thing. So how do you do peripheral vision? You just look, I'm looking at a camera, but open your vision to the 180-degree angle so you can see the things on side of you and the things above you. That's peripheral vision, and you can consciously activate it. Keep in mind, fight and flight uses pinpoint vision. So your vision becomes very, very hyper-focused in a fight and flight mode. So we want to consciously tell our physiology, our nervous system, hey, everything's cool. Open that peripheral vision. We're not in danger right now. Plus, you could do humming. So some very basic type of humming, soothing style humming that you might do with a child or something like that. Plus, you could do rocking, physically rocking your body, touching your body in a comforting way, being in a chair that rocks. Plus cold water. So if you dunk your head in cold water, if you take a cold shower, if you step into a cold river, all of these things plus more will push your body automatically into the rest and digest system, aka your parasympathetic system. Now, if you do all these together, you will have the master key to your autonomic nervous system. You will know consciously and be able to consciously make your fight and flight system turn off and turn on your rest and digest system. Other examples of turning on your rest and digest system are written here. Meditation is a classic example. Meditation is better used as a coping skill that you practice daily to notice gradual effects rather than, oh my gosh, I'm anxious, I'm going to meditate. Now, it can work that way, but really what you'd want to do is commit to a 5-minute practice of meditation every day for like 21 days. And then at that point, you can access the calm, the rest and digest of meditation. But really, you have to train your brain, train your nervous system, what's even going on when you do a meditation. And FYI, people with trauma and PTSD really struggle with meditation for good reason. When we go into purposely rest and digest moments, when like a meditation, the nervous system of someone with trauma and PTSD recognizes that relaxing of the amygdala as a potential danger because all of a sudden your guard's down. And what happens then is right in the middle of sleep or right in the middle of meditation, the nervous system kicks back up and all the alarm bells go off. And that's the amygdala going, I'm trying to keep you safe because we've lived in chronic stress and fear for a long time. So I'm always trying to keep you safe, right? Don't let that dissuade you. It just takes getting used to those feelings of panic and reteaching your brain and reteaching your nervous system that it's okay. You're choosing to do this willfully. We're trying to reach a place in our body where we can rest and digest comfortably without alarm bells going off. Another practice that you've heard about, I'm sure, in therapy is mindfulness. Walking is one of the greatest ways to put us into rest and digest regularly. Exercise, same thing. Think about movement like dancing and exercise and walking. What it does is it burns through that excess energy in the amygdala, and it sort of like helps tamp down just by using that hyper aroused energy. It helps tamp down the amygdala and the fight and flight system, and it brings online, after we get done, the rest and digest system. Breath work, doing all sorts of different types of breathing practices. I mean, you could literally just control the autonomic nervous system through breath work. That's one of the few coping skills that's sort of a master key to the whole system. Grounding, as we already mentioned, right? Okay, so remember, we can quickly turn on the rest and digest system by using labeling, slow breathing, peripheral vision, humming, rocking, meditation, cold water, all sorts of things, but all of it is sort of teaching the body how to go into a rest and digest mode. And when we're talking about rest and digest, and when we're talking about controlling the nervous system, then we're talking about the vagus nerve and vagus nerve sort of activities. And all these that I just mentioned involve the vagus nerve in the positive sense by turning on the rest and digest system. All right, so if you are someone who is sort of stuck in chronic fight and flight, then this little bit is for you. Check it out. This often means, like if you've been in chronic fight and flight for as long as you can remember, this often means that you have an anxious attachment style, meaning your anxiety goes all the way back to at least age 2 and probably earlier than that. So it's a real deep nervous system training that you've experienced since you were basically like a wee child. It can also mean that you've had a history of neglect and trauma, particularly in the first 7 years of life. But of course, it could have happened later as an adult or in your teenage years. And if this is you, what's the solution? Well, essentially, you want to begin to reparent yourself into secure attachment. So what would a good parent have done to calm you when you're upset, or to quell you when you had fears, or to remind you to go into a state of self-care? That's secure attachment. You can just read about secure attachment and begin to practice the skills of secure attachment with yourself. That's why it's called reparenting. It doesn't involve your partner necessarily. Of course, they'll be involved, but it doesn't mean they're doing it for you. It means you're doing the work to reparent yourself into what a secure attachment is, which in large part just means you can regulate your nervous system. And of course, you have to rewire your rest and digest system. And you'll do that by practicing secure attachment, but you can also do that faster by doing some of those things we mentioned in the previous slide. Breathing certain ways, labeling things, using peripheral vision, humming, rocking, cold water, all these types of things retrain your nervous system what it means to be in rest and digest so that you can appropriately enter fight and flight when and if the time is needed, but not be living in fight and flight. That's unsustainable. It's unhealthy. You don't like the feeling of it. Nobody likes the feeling of it. And that's chronic anxiety. Now, if, on the other hand, your anxiety is more situational or occasional, like you haven't had it your whole life, it's just maybe the past 6 months, or maybe it's the past 5 weeks or something like that, then address this by practicing rest and digest practices for 21 to 40 days in a row. Really double down and really commit on doing something that you can tolerate. Say it's meditation or say it's walking, and practice it every day. 5 minutes will do. So if you can't do any more than 5 minutes, at least commit to 5 minutes. Even better, 5 minutes in the morning, 5 minutes at night of some type of rest and digest practice that you just don't stop doing for 21 to 40 days. Just don't. Don't even think about stopping until after 21 days. Because at 21 days, you begin to form the neural networks in the brain, and then you begin to actually notice positive benefits. Before that, you might be thinking, this isn't doing anything, Jesse. Why are you having me do all this stupid stuff? So you got to give it the appropriate amount of time to at least know if it has any benefit at all. And it is my guess, it is my theory, it is my belief that if you practice any of those types of practices for 21 to 40 days, you'll begin to notice benefits in your sleep, in your mood, in your energy, in your focus, and ultimately in your ability to remain calm, in your ability to sort of tell your anxious brain, your amygdala, like, hey, I've checked it out. Thank you very much for the warning signal. Everything's cool here. We don't have to be in fear right now. We don't have to be on high alert. Now, I want you to check out my mentorship program here really quickly. If you see that where it says biological, spiritual, social, and psychological domain, what we're talking about when we're dealing with anxiety could involve any one of those 4 domains. So we just really focused on sort of the biological, like the nervous system itself. But what about if there was actually other drivers to your anxiety? Spiritual driver could be something like a lack of meaning and purpose, or a loss of relationship with a religion or a God. That can profoundly alter someone's sense of anxiety, right? But it's in a different domain than the biological. And it's true for all of these domains. So if you'd like a little bit of mentorship with your anxiety, your mental health, check out the link below and you can learn a little bit more about the program that we're offering. Here are my free gifts to you. One of these is an ebook about ending anxiety. So it goes a little bit deeper into anxiety in particular. There's just 4 simple steps that I really mention in this ebook, and it's free. So go ahead and click the other link below and you can get this sent to your email right away. And that was Your Nervous System, How to Turn Off Anxiety. And I'd love to add the word forever, because let's just sort of be done with anxiety. It's something that we can master. Yes, it might take a little bit of help. It might take a little bit of mentorship, but it is something that we can ultimately own. And I believe that it is your birthright to basically live in a state of rest and digest. We are not meant to live in fight and flight all day, every day. So if that's you, my heart goes out to you, but also now's the time to take some action. Check out the home mentorship program. That could be something that could be really helpful. It's affordable. You'd be working with me and a group of people just like yourselves. On that note, everybody, thanks for watching the video. I hope you take care of yourself out there, and I will see you in the next video.